Podcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, I'm Frances Jo Hamilton, and I would like to welcome everyone today for the webinar. Our webinars are brought to you as a membership benefit of Heritage Ohio. Heritage Ohio's mission is to help people save the places that matter, build community, and live better. Today, we will have a presentation on fire awareness and prevention downtown. We will be taking questions at the end of the presentation. If you have a question, please type it into the question box at any time. Most issues with the webinar software will be solved if you close the program and restart it with the link that was sent to you. This webinar has been approved for AIA HSW continuing education credits, so please email us as indicated in the chat box if you would like to receive credit or certification. Our presenter today is Chief John I am just stumbling over my words, Chief. Our presentation today is with Chief John Donahue from Delaware, Ohio. I've had the privilege of working with John since about 1999 or so, I think. We've done a lot of programming in downtown Delaware, and he, along with his staff at our fire department in Delaware, have done a fantastic job of protecting and preserving our downtown. So it's my privilege to introduce to you John, and I'll turn it over to you.
Great, thank you, and good afternoon. I'm so worried about saying good morning today. Today what we'd like to do is talk a little bit about the experiences we've had in Delaware, some of the work we've done. I really need to highlight and emphasize that the work is truly a public and private partnership involving many people, business owners in our downtown, Main Street Delaware downtown, our building department, our city government, the fire department, and the citizens and customers that come to Delaware. Many of the pictures that you're going to see are pictures of our downtown. Exciting is the one that you see here is on Sandusky Street, looking actually north from where essentially Amado's is today. But having said that, we'll provide a little bit of an overview of Delaware, or where we're at today. Talk a little bit about our fire department, because there's a lot of rich history and heritage with our fire department. And then really get into the meat of our presentation, talk a little bit about the impact that fire has on businesses, preventive measures that everybody can talk about. And then we'll talk a little bit about responses, that if we are responding to your business, whether it's for a medical call or even for a fire call, things that you can expect the fire department to do, but also at the same time things that you can do as a preemptive measures. And then finally we'll wrap up with questions. So let's talk a little bit about the City of Delaware. Delaware was incorporated in 1809, so we're over nearing actually 210 years of age. And our city is really focused on a slogan of charming small town. It's a charming small town feel with a modern big city amenities. And I say that because when you look at really what has gone on in Delaware and Delaware counties, there's been tremendous change and growth. Our city, or our county as a whole, is the #1 fastest growing county in the state of Ohio, but also the 22nd fastest growing county in the United States. And I think that it really shows the partnerships that we end up having, some of the great feel and desires in our community, in our county as a region, to have people move into there. There's that strong desire. But also this year, our city was named one of the 100 best places to live. And being a resident of our city, I can concur with that. And it was a nice little feather in our cap to receive that, because we certainly do have a beautiful city. The two pictures that you have, the first one actually shows on the right-hand side the old City Hall, which unfortunately burned down in the early 1900s. As a result of an arson fire. But also to the right of that is our Strand Theater. And as Fran, as you know, that's one of our staple theaters in our downtown. I think it's the oldest private theater in the United States. And it's great, the amount of work that they've gone in renovating that. Truly, they just opened up the second floor balcony on that. So it really is exciting. So we talk a little bit about our city, but we also have a vibrant downtown. And you were certainly, Fran, part of the downtown revitalization, and great business owners, Roger Koch, Joe Diamond, did a lot in purchasing these buildings and really making those buildings brought up and making them desirable buildings again. It was a downtown that was struggling for many years, and name those two business owners because they've done a lot. There's many more that have been part of that, but you look at our downtown and it just continues to thrive. And with the healthy downtown, it's thriving because it's going through the changes, and we're seeing sidewalk cafes now and restaurants, and even we have breweries, but we're seeing specialty shops, cheese shops and olive oil shops in this. It's really neat. It's really becoming that charm to bring people into it. Some of the other things that we have going in our community are some of the events downtown, and probably two of the big I say two of the big ones, staple events are, Main Street or our Arts Festival.
Yes.
We had the Main Street Delaware's first Fridays that is a huge part, and in October we're part of that from our fire prevention aspect. But we also have other, community events with the car shows, the cruise in, and so forth that bring people to our community. So I think everybody is focused to make our downtown that staple event or staple location. But all this couldn't be it wouldn't happen if we didn't have everybody working together in organizations such as our Main Street Delaware, really helping coordinate that. So I know you were a part of that. We have Susie now heading that up as, yes, exactly. But as I talk about our city now is focusing on nearly 40,000 people. And when I got there back in the 2000s, we were right at that 30,000 cuspid. So over the course of, several years, we've really more than, well, I shouldn't say double, but we've grown dramatically. And we're seeing a 12% increase since 2010 in our population. And looking at all the subdivisions going in, we have a lot of that new growth, which is bringing people. But one of the things that people love is our downtown. And so it's essential that we work to keep our downtown healthy and safe. So let's talk a little bit about our fire department. And this isn't our current fire department as you're seeing it, but our fire department was formed in 1831. And as Heritage Ohio, we like to keep that heritage. And one of the things that we have done on our fire apparatus is now taking some of the old names of our fire department and putting that on the bottom or on our truck as far as a decal. And in 1847, we had department names and different locations in our city, one of which was Rough and Ready Hook and Ladder, which I always love that name because when you think of a hook and ladder, the truck company or ladder company, you always think of these big burly men, and what a great name, Rough and Ready. But we have them as part of our, as far as our ladder truck, and we have the Olentangy River, and out of our main fire station is the Olentangy engine. So we're bringing that even back into our fire department. But as I mentioned, 1831 we were built. We had our first hand pumps in 1834. First steam engine in 1870, and our first horse-drawn hook and ladder in 1876. The picture that you see on the left is our horse-drawn ladder truck back then, but that is actually in front of University Hall, Great Chapel, which is part of the Ohio Wesleyan campus, and they've also been a huge part of our downtown. Actually own several buildings down there, big part of helping with the Strand Theater, but bringing community events to downtown as well. And on the right-hand side is our new City Hall. I say new because after the fire in the early 1900s, they built a new City Hall. Our fire station was located there up until 1972 when Chief Bills relocated it several blocks from there, and that where you see the fire trucks now is actually our finance office. So I always joke that we have a little bit of control over the finance office. But interesting, the fire truck that you see on the left-hand side, I had the privilege last Thursday, that is still in existence. And that is up in Ballville Township, outside of Fremont, Ohio, and they still use it for parades, and they've done a tremendous job in maintaining that truck. So I always greatly appreciate that. So let's talk a little bit about our current fire department. I'm just going to go over this real quickly. But our fire department has evolved, become a modern fire department, and with our fire apparatus, and as a fire department, we do exactly what you expect us and think of us doing. We provide the fire EMS as far as a paramedic service, hazmat, technical rescue, because of some of the recreation that we end up having throughout our area in the river. We do water rescue. We do industrial because we do have a lot of industry. And we do other heavy trench rescue, confined space rescues, and so forth. We have 5 companies on duty any different day, operating out of 3 of our stations, and later this month we are planning on breaking ground with our 4th fire station down in the city's southeast quadrant. But we do about 5,800 calls a year, and that's hard to believe, but 16 calls a day on average of what we do.
I had no idea there were 16 calls a day.
Yes, it's busy, and times will be not weather related, but we'll do close to 30 calls a day, for our guys throughout our city. The majority of those, just like any other fire department, is because of EMS calls. But other things that we do, our risk reduction division, it was formerly known as our fire prevention division, and that's what we're going to talk a little bit about today. And we call it risk reduction because we don't always focus on fire prevention. That's just one aspect. We're looking at all hazards. So we'll talk a little bit about weather. We'll talk a little bit about emergency medical. What can we do to reduce those type of responses? And then our professional development division just handles our training aspect. So let's talk a little bit about the purpose of today's meeting. Here's 2 fires that we had recently in our downtown area. The first one is 12 West, and right before, almost I think 3 years ago, we had a fire during a couple days before Christmas. Second floor, it caught fire of this restaurant. Had nothing to do with the restaurant. It was an office space, but they put that business out for close to a year, and it's a well-loved restaurant. Unfortunately, they've come back stronger. Yes. And actually purchased the property next to them where the West End Grill was, and now is putting in a new restaurant there to expand. But it's an unfortunate event. This was an accidental fire. So that was number 1. Number 2 was a fire right next to our it used to be juvenile court. Now it's Mary Haven's in that building, but it was a fire in an old funeral home that ended up having a child daycare building. Unfortunately, the fire started in the basement, and it was actually the fire alarms in the juvenile court that detected the fire, so it had a well-sustained fire growing in there, and it burned through the floor when we got there. But you can see the damage and the impact, and with our great business owners that we have, if you look at that building now, they've done a great job of making it look and fit into our downtown and preserving that. But that fire there was one of the focuses that I had, saying we've got to protect our downtown. We've got to make this the last major fire that we have. And when you have restaurants and you have different things, you always have the potential of that, but let's make this the last one where we end up losing a building. And the reason for that is that 75% of the companies that experience a fire, a serious fire, end up going out of business. and they do not recover because of that. And there's a multitude of different reasons for that we'll talk about. But they go out of business either as a result of the fire or within 3 years of reopening. And because that business at that point in time gets really shut down after the fire, and then it takes a while to get them back up and operating and restored. Those people have gone now to other locations to either have their to get their supplies or to provide their supplies to them. So we'll talk a little bit about that as we go on. But I think it's really interesting as we look, and this is a statistic from the National Fire Protection Association, that in 2011, the economic losses as a result of fire, and these were, the reported fires, was $14.9 billion.
Wow.
And that's just 1 year, $14.9 billion. And, we're a first world country. And you look at all the stuff and things that are afforded to us, whether, we have cell phones, we have fire alarm systems, we have smoke detectors. We're not a third world country. And we certainly see an economic impact that it ends up having. When we look at that, and we talk a little bit about the direct fire loss, the direct fire loss is really the damage that is caused by the fire growing. So you look at the damage to the building, you look at the damage to the contents. The indirect is the impact as a result of that fire. So the lost revenue coming in, the salaries, and the impact that it may have on other businesses that provide the supplies, all have a direct or indirect cost as a result of this fire. So let's talk about the 5 impacts of a fire. And those 5 impacts are going to end up being economic impact, organizational impact, legal, psychological, and also political. Just looking at these 2 fires that you have in front of us, the one on the left was the fire later on as it continued inside the center of that building. As I said, it breached the 2nd floor. One of the things that we focused on was not necessarily dumping water in from the roof, because if we did that, it would actually push the fire down and to the adjacent buildings. And as we know, with our downtown, the construction of these, while you may see a solid wall, doesn't mean it's always necessarily solid. And there was 2 breaches in walls that we ended up finding that were there pre-existing, that were covered over, that when the drywall came off as a result of the fire, it started to get into the nooks and crannies and spread. Fortunately, we maintained minimum damage to those other 2. I say minimum. It had an impact, took them out, but nothing to what this individual building was. So let's talk a little bit about the 5 economic loss, or 5 impacts of fire. The first one is the economic impact, and we've really touched base with that somewhat. But there is a loss of income to that business, and if there should be a fire, now we're no longer able to do what we've always been wanting to do, whether it's a service, whether it's a restaurant, or a business providing. We've lost that income coming in. We've also have the potential of losing the business, the people that we're providing, whether they're customers coming in, buying our products, eating at our restaurant, or services that we provided on a professional basis. They're no longer coming to us. They've ended up looking at elsewhere to get that and sustain, so they could sustain whatever they're planning on doing, whether it's business or going out to eat. But the loss of investment as well. We look at our buildings, and I certainly look at our downtown as an investment in our community, because it is a huge resource for us. But that's it's a huge loss to us in our investment. From an organizational standpoint, your employees, where are they going to end up going? Yeah.
The funny thing that happened when we lost 12 West is that it seemed like a lot of the other downtown restaurateurs hired the staff from 12 West, and then when they got up and running again, then those employees were able to retain employment in the downtown directly, but then be able to come back to 12 West to work again. So it was a great example of how our community kind of pulls together when it comes to times like that. And I don't think they had as much of an impact on it, losing employees as they could have.
And that's a great point. And as I mentioned right when we keyed off, it's a public-private partnership. And the restaurants and businesses work together. And they work together so that they thrive. And it's not a competition amongst each other. And I can't tell you how many times I've gone into our businesses to see another, business owner in there either buying a product or eating. And it's pretty neat to see. And, business can be very cutthroat. But my experience has been just the opposite, and certainly our downtown is they're all there supporting each other. And when you look at our downtown, and I know this is the same in other downtowns throughout the state of Ohio, they're there working to make improvements in their downtown, because not only do they have beautiful buildings, but they have unique products that they're selling. And while the new malls, tend to bring people out to them, they're looking at bringing a different culture into our downtown. And I know we've been very successful, and I'd say those business owners, those property owners, Main Street Delaware with the city, to focus on bringing those businesses and people coming into our city. So yes, you're absolutely right. They work together. And so that's things that, Main Street and Heritage Ohio can work on, is fostering those relationships if something unfortunate should happen. But the organizational employees may leave, but it may be hard to recruit new people as a result of that. And I say that when a business, has something that happens, you sort of look at that business and say, is that something I want to be part of? That has an impact on that organization, and that's something that they have to overcome. And you have that strong relationship, it can help to overcome. The legal impact, civil litigation, and we've really gotten into being a litigious society. And depending on what happens with that fire, there's going to be some type of litigation occurring, and it may be because of the monetary loss, it may be because of an injury, death, or failure to comply with fire codes. But one of the things that has really become prevalent has been insurance companies then looking to recoup their money. And their insurance companies are not there just to, when something happens, pay out the money. They're a business, and you look around, and no offense to these insurance companies, but they're out to make money as well. And so if they end up finding that, everybody remembers the Mr. Coffee, that caused many fires many years ago. They go back after those that businesses and try to recoup their loss. And so we're seeing that. So whether you may see the legal impact, there is always a legal impact from a fire in some way, shape, form, or another. So the psychological is the fourth impact that it ends up having. And when a fire happens, we certainly see that, the impact that it has on that family, and those business owners. And when you look at the downtown area, these people have put their heart and soul into their business, and doing everything that they can do to make their business go. And to have a fire is really, it creates a psychological damage for them, even if they're not injured, but for those that are involved with that, the traumatic experience from family, from friends, having to deal with that, and the community as a large, it has an impact on our community. And then the final item is the political impact. And when I talk a little bit about political, it's not always Republican or Democrat. It's the politics of the community. and the loss of faith that the customers may have with the business, the suppliers, the buyers, and so forth. But it's also going to have a reduction in our tax base, and that property is not going to be valued as much as it may end up having. We may end up losing not only from a property tax standpoint, but those people pay income tax as well, as many of our downtown businesses have, and they're no longer going to be paying. So it does have an impact on us. The loss of property, in units that are available or being utilized. And at the same time, then these businesses after that fire are going to be abandoned for a period of time. And I know we really have a fantastic building official and building department and community development department within our city that really work to help get these businesses up from our economic side of it with Sean Hughes and Dave Eflin, but I really give also a lot of credit to Jerry Warner and our downtown. Is when these type of situations happen, we look at what we can do to get these businesses up and going, and you don't want to have these buildings looking like they're burnt out. We need to get in there and get those resolved, get those buildings boarded up, and then get contractors in there to get those the building restored. And I know the fire that I showed, I think it was the weekend before, the couple days before our horse parade, if you remember.
Yep.
And so that was part of it, because there was concern of some of the collapse, that how are we going to secure and provide for a safe parade at the same time. But within several weeks, we had that building, torn down after the investigation occurred, and got that site restored, and from the ashes grew another beautiful building down there. So that's working together and making sure that we have a prosperous city. So let's talk a little bit about some of the preventive measures. And one thing I want to really focus on, there's a lot of myths about fire inspectors, and there's no quotas. I know in our city, we do not charge for any type of fire inspection. I know there are some communities that end up charging, trying to recoup some of that. But really, from our fire inspectors, what we're really focused on is ensuring the continued success and longevity of the businesses in our community. And whether it's the downtown or our heavy industry, that's truly our focus. And we want to, we have that partnership. And we want to go in there and make sure that those businesses are safe, so that business can continue and they don't have a fire. But also the people coming into the community or into that business, we want to make sure they're safe as well. So what are some of the typical violations that we typically find? And one of the biggest things is going to be improper electrical. And when you look at the picture here, many of these buildings were built in the late 1800s. And was there electricity back there? No. And so electricity has gone through, and now they all do have electricity, but they've had contractors come in and put electrical service in there. And when you look at the electrical service that's gone in there, in AEP, it's over the years, it's morphosized, from just being a small little electric being provided for some lights to now providing heating and air conditioning and full service throughout. And so many of our older buildings, when the electrical service was put in there, was small. But now, because of the demand for service and the lighting and air conditioning, we need to make sure that the service that's in there is able to provide the service. And we want to make sure that we have the proper wiring. One of the biggest challenges we have is overcoming extension cords, right?
Yep.
And extension cords are flexible wiring and designed to be that temporary stopgap. Excuse me. And used for a Christmas tree for a temporary period of time, or used for a drill or something to that. It is not designed to replace an outlet. Sorry, let me. The next item we have is dealing with exit lighting and emergency lighting. And I know even at our fire stations, this is some of the biggest challenges, keeping these exit lights on, batteries working in all of our emergency lighting and exit light fixtures. But this is a key item and key importance, and it sort of sticks out when you walk into a business and you see that it's not properly illuminated. It's funny, I know I certainly see that, but I think many people see that. Ooh, that exit light's not illuminated. But that's there for safety purposes and to help you guide if there should be an emergency in that building. Number one, the exit signs will show you how to get out. Number two, the emergency lighting that the power should go out, help provide lighting so you can end up getting out. Fire extinguishers, fire extinguisher service, making sure that you have the right fire extinguishers for the building. And yes, they do have to be checked annually.
And that's for your home too, right, Chief?
Absolutely, for your home as well. Fires don't always occur in businesses they have at home. And with that, fire extinguishers is really just a stopgap measure. And I call it almost like the Band-Aid that we use for first aid. It's there to stop that bleeding, or in this case, stop the fire when it's nice and small. And anytime you have the fire, we want you to call the fire department. I'd rather come out on 1,000 fires that have gone out or the owners put out to make sure they're out and they haven't gotten into a wall or created some other type of issue. But there's no cost to our service for us coming out in the City of Delaware. That's provided for your coverage with your taxes. But allow us to come out there and do the job. We have neat little tools that we can check temperatures with thermal imaging cameras to make sure that there's something not smoldering there. Also, fire alarms, sprinklers, hydrant tests, making sure those get tested annually. The reason for both the fire extinguishers and fire alarms is to ensure that they're operational. You're depending on them to work. They need to be tested to ensure that they'll do exactly what they're designed to do. Exit paths. Too many fires have occurred where exits have been blocked and people haven't been able to get out. Beverly Hills Supper Club fire in northern Kentucky was one of the most recent large ones in this area that had that, and we need to make sure that those exit paths are open, operational to get everybody out should there be a fire. Improper storage. When these buildings, especially in our downtown, were built many times in their stairwells, they'll put storage because there's not a lot of storage areas in these older buildings. But we need to make sure that the storage is kept in the proper locations, not put in stairwells, because that is part of your means of escape. So number one, it'll create an obstruction, but number two, it provide a fuel source in your open shaft in your building to help facilitate the spread of fire, and that's what we don't want to do. And the other thing that we really focus on, which may seem a little silly, is breakers and making sure they're properly marked. And we say that from the standpoint that if there's a situation, we want you to be able to get, if you're going to deal with it, to be able to shut down the electrical service to that whatever needs to be shut down. Otherwise, we have to shut down everything. But shutting down the breakers and having them properly labeled will help facilitate and minimize the time in trying to isolate a problem. So I like this picture right here, and the reason why I say that is that's our city hall and our current city hall and the current picture. But on the right-hand side is our downtown in the early 1900s. You can see, with the electrical lines, and it's really a pretty picture of how we work together. And, all those utility lines that you see now on the right-hand side with the multiple layers and tiers on the pole, those are all gone. All the utilities are buried underground now. And our downtown went through a landscaping, early 2000s, wasn't it? Mm-hmm. And it really helped provide some additional beauty. But now we're able to really focus on the beauty that we have in our downtown and all the work that our owners, downtown owners and businesses have done. But it really necessitates a really cooperative working relationship. And I know, Fran, you had came to me early when I came here with December, and we have a tree lighting ceremony as part of First Friday. And I think you came nervously to me and asked, "Hey, Chief, it's going to be cold this Friday. Is there any way we can get some burn barrels?" And a lot of people would just say, "Nope, that's too much of a hazard." But we put together a plan, and where we could do it safely. And we had somebody around them. We have fire protection around them, and somebody keeping it. It's been a tremendous. It's become really a staple part of the downtown, being able to do that. And so that's where working together, we can add to the ambience of the downtown and really make it, again, that destination. I say that is to utilize your fire inspectors and as a resource. I mean, we're there for you. And if our businesses aren't thriving downtown, guess what? Our community's not thriving downtown. And if our community's not thriving, then we don't have a tax base. So it's one of these repetitive things that we got to work together and focus on the mindset of what can we do to make this happen, make it safe, but make it a win-win for everybody. And so the other thing that I ask, of the business owners and also the property owners is know your building. And you're there day in and day out. If something's not looking right or not working right, get it fixed. Because that, just like with your own health, if you're not feeling well, that can only escalate into a bigger issue. So if something's not right, get with take care of it. Call your fire department, and we may be able to help give you some direction, your building department, but your property owner. But let's all work together to get that problem resolved. Along with that, conduct your own safety walkthrough. I know we get complacent. We walk into I walk into the house. I say hi to my wife every, night that I get home, and the dog's going crazy. But that's home. We feel comfortable with that. But if something's not right, we can catch that usually by walking through and making sure everything's okay. I go down into my basement once a day just to check, make sure water pumps, or some pumps, not causing a problem, and making sure something wasn't left on or something may be going wrong. So just do that safety walkthrough, make sure everything's looking good in your business. But also have an emergency action plan that if something's going to happen, you already know what you're going to end up doing. And certainly that could be from a sump pump, who are you going to call if something like that happens, who's going to call if you have an electrical problem, because we certainly know if you have a fire, law, a police emergency, or EMS, you're going to call 911, and that's what we want you to do. So have those type of plans put together so you already knew, because nothing worse is try to figure something out when the emergencies happen. But other things that we can do from a fire department standpoint is provide fire extinguisher training. And I know we have these, nice little pretty red things. I call them pretty because sort of have a pride and joy, seeing those, because that's there as your safety measure. But it doesn't do any of us any good if people do not know how to utilize them. So just get with your local fire department, learn how to use those fire extinguishers, and hopefully you'll never have to do, but if you do, they'll be there. Just remember, pass, pull the pin, aim the nozzle, squeeze the handles, and sweep it back and forth at the base of the fire. That's how you can, just a quick educational aspect on how to use a fire extinguisher. But also, especially large businesses have AEDs, and I know we've certainly been pushing them. We have them in all of our city facilities. But an AED is an automatic external defibrillator. So if somebody goes into cardiac arrest, they're very simple to use. And though when you turn it on, it'll guide you and provide instructions on how to utilize the AED. And it'll only shock somebody or defibrillate somebody if it meets certain criteria. And those devices take care of that. But also have a little first aid kit, Band-Aids. Have ice packs available should something end up happening. And then finally, I always say have fire drills. And, in homes, when we teach kids in the schools, we talk about exit drills in the home. But you should have them for your businesses and be familiar, make sure your exits are all clear. And, just for your employees, make sure they know how to get everybody out, know how you're going to make sure that everybody is out, because that's going to be one of the big questions that we ask you when we arrive on scene: is everybody out of the building? So what should you do, or what should we do? Calling 911, and the sooner you do that, the better it is. The faster we can get there to your location, whether it's a medical emergency or law enforcement or fire emergency, the better we can resolve the situation. And the faster we resolve the situation, the smaller we can keep it. Other things that you can do is send somebody out to meet the fire department. So if you call 911, get somebody there to, flag us down, show us the easiest way to get in to that business and to where this situation is. Begin rendering care. If there's somebody injured, provide, and if you're not sure what you can do, just even compassion, showing them is a huge thing, that they feel that they're being taken care of. We try to be on scene within 6 minutes of the 911 center picking up the phone. In our downtown area, we're usually there in 4 minutes. And so that's typically 1 minute for the dispatcher entering the information, 1 minute for our guys then to get out of whatever they're doing to the trucks and out the door, wheels rolling, fully dressed out. And then the other part of the 6 minutes is a 4 minute travel time. And we're right at 4 minutes overall, 2 minute travel time to our downtown. So that's what we're focusing on. There's many reasons for that because of the fire growth. But if somebody should be having a heart attack and their heart's not perfusing the brain, that means brain death as well. And so the faster we can get there to start resolving and overcoming that, the less likelihood that they'll end up having any type of adverse effects. But also make sure the building's evacuated, that you have a meeting place out front to ensure everybody's out. We also, when possible, keep as many doors in your business, even in your home. And one of the things that I've been promoting is close before you doze at home. Close your doors. And that acts as a shield and separates the smoke and the fire from coming in. So it provides that extra protection. No different than your businesses. If you can keep those doors closed, you're much better off in keeping the fire contained. Shut down the power as soon as possible. And if you can and feel comfortable using a fire extinguisher, please do that. Just make sure that when you position yourself, that you're not putting yourself in a position that you could end up becoming trapped by the fire. So you should be between the fire and your escape route. Other things that you can end up doing is having a weather radio. We get storms throughout here. So knowing windstorms, tornadoes, heavy thunderstorms to keep people in, weather radio will provide that. As I mentioned, a first aid kit, automatic defibrillator are great things, and your local fire department can help you, assist you in getting the right one for you. Other things have building drawings available for them that includes evacuation routes, fire extinguisher locations, your first aid kits, AED locations, and your utility shutoffs, such as your electrical boxes, your gas shutoff, and even your weather or your water shutoffs. And then finally, if you can get a fire alarm system, and even if your building does not require one, I highly recommend that. If you can't afford that, certainly just even your smoke detectors, getting some of those in will help you while you're there become aware of a situation. So with that really was the premise of my discussion, and I think at this point we'll be ready for any type of questions.
I have one question for you.
Sure.
So to even my home fire extinguishers, I can take them to a local fire station and have them recharged, or?
No, actually, local fire stations typically do not provide that. And it's a little hard, and I always look at it from the ethical aspect of it, that if we're writing a notice of violation that you have to have your fire extinguisher checked, that say, hey, by the way, we'll take care of that for you. And it'll cost you. So no, we're actually acting as the code enforcement person. But if you look in the phone book or look on the internet, look at under fire extinguishers in the area. There's many different companies out there. There's actually state certification if you're doing this for profit, that you have to have actually a state certification to do that type of work. Okay. And unfortunately, in Delaware, we don't recommend anybody because that really puts us. One business may say, hey, you're favoring them versus us. So we always say, look at who's the best company for you, and talk to your friends. And, in your neighboring businesses, if you're new and don't have somebody, find out who they're using. And a lot of times, your Main Street may help facilitate some of that, that they may be able to cut a rate. And, if they're able to get a whole bunch of businesses downtown, instead of doing a service charge, you may be able to have one service charge and treat each, just charge, each business for the service themselves.
Sure. Great.
All right, we have a couple questions coming in. And if you have not typed in your questions, please do so at this time. So first question from the audience. Do you have any advice for towns where a fire has occurred and the building or business owner did nothing, had no insurance, and they have abandoned the building? Meanwhile, it sits unsecure and the window shows a mess inside. The fire chief said litigation is pending. I'm just disappointed the village can't require building owners to show proof of insurance since their building is connected to the others and put at risk. So what can you do?
How we handle it, and there's many different specifics that may come into play. But my recommendation is get with your local building department. We have a property maintenance code within our city that helps guide this. But I know there's some other alternatives that your local building official will have access to. As far as the openings and so forth, there's other avenues as far as a public nuisance that could end up being declared for these vacant type of buildings. So get with your local chief building official, and they can typically help guide you through this.
Great. And second question. Can you explain the appropriateness of using a fire alarm system versus a sprinkler system for code compliance in upper level housing, etc.?
Okay. So a fire alarm system typically utilizes some type of activation device to make notification into a building. And those activation devices could be anything from a smoke detector to a heat detector, to manual pull stations that you see in schools, to sprinkler systems and various other fire suppression. So they are really designed to make notification to the business itself. Now, along with that, we highly recommend, and the code, depending on the type of occupancy, also does require, in certain circumstances, to be tied to a central station, so that when the fire alarm activates, the fire department automatically gets notified as well. A sprinkler system is designed to begin providing some type of containment of that fire. And so they activate basically through heat. And unfortunately, Hollywood has done a disservice that some of the shows you see that when the sprinkler system activates, it activates all the sprinkler heads, and that's not true. It's no different than, let's think about your plumbing system and your water in your house. You have water piped throughout your house, and when you open up a faucet, only that faucet ends up opening. No different than a sprinkler head, okay? And a sprinkler head, when it opens automatically, it has a fusible link. And when it gets hot enough, it melts that fusible link that opens up that sprinkler head to allow water to be dispersed. So those are the two different aspects of it. There's different code requirements as far as each one. Both of them need to be maintained on a periodic basis. At a minimum of once a year, they need to be done. And now, if you do not have one, which one should you install? I would leave that for discussion between you, the building owner, business owner, the fire chief, and building official to look at that. I think in most cases the sprinkler system is going to be a little bit more costly, but with that over time, you can talk to your insurance agent too. It may end up paying for itself. There may also be grants available for you to put a sprinkler system in there as well. So that's why I use your local resources to do that. From a fire chief standpoint, I can't say enough about either one of those because the sprinkler system will start trying to keep it in containment. A fire alarm system with detection such as smoke detector will get us notified immediately with that we can get there quickly. And the faster we get there, the faster that we can keep this situation small.
Great. And then, next question. Do you have any local building codes that exceed state minimum for historic building modifications?
I'm going to reply to that. That's really more of a building official standpoint. But I do know from my knowledge that the building code, and it's very difficult for a city to make more stringent codes. And that's why we have a building code that is a statewide building code. I would get with your local, building official because I don't want to speak, statewide, but find out if they have anything that is more stringent because it may not be a building issue as much as some other requirement, non-building code.
All right. And does the City of Delaware have residential units downtown?
We do, and that's one of the great things that our business owners have done is they focused on the first floor being mercantile restaurants and so forth, but they converted second and third floors of our downtown into residential. And every June, I think it is, they have a downtown a walk as part of First Friday where they highlight some of these, I think they call it their hidden spaces. And it's just, my wife and I have talked, it would be neat to live downtown. And of course we have a house, but boy, some of these buildings and looking at the view and that you would end up having are just spectacular. So to answer the question, yes, and there are really some beautiful apartments and livings downtown.
And for those downtown units, does the city require a fire alarm system in those units? And does Delaware have a guide for residential fire safety best practices?
And many of the businesses, and we follow again the Ohio Building Code, many of those that have been converted have a fire separation in between the business and the residential area. They do have fire alarm systems located in there as well. So when we get dispatched to those, we'll go to the fire alarm panel and tell us exactly where the fire is located, and we'll go check it out. One of the other items that we use is a Knox box, and many of the cities and villages out in throughout Ohio, I'm sure are using these Knox boxes. But when we get a fire alarm, instead of having to force entry causing damage, we have a master safe, if you will, key box on the outside that the fire department can access, open up, and gain access into the building so we can readily check out what the situation is. Again, from the code standpoint, our fire inspectors will ensure and maintain to ensure that the fire alarms are maintained. It's the building code that ends up driving that. We always, during the plan review process, really push to ensure that there is some type of fire safety detection system in some of these businesses.
Okay. Do you have or do you know of any financial incentives for upgrading the fire protection of historic buildings?
Again, I would talk to your local community development department in your city. Find out there may be some grants available to your downtown. I know our city has a facade program that they've been upgrading many of the facades. So the specific requirements, that's not handled out of my department, it's handled out of our our city's community development. Certainly our economic development also has part of that. But talk to them and they may be able to assist you in providing some guidance on being able to put in fire detection or fire suppression systems.
And then how do you deal with historic buildings that have tin ceilings that are problematic due to fire suppression between first and second floors?
The way some of that has been handled, and boy, these tin ceilings, the artistic aspect of it. However, the separation between floors is a UL, which is Underwriters Laboratory tested system. So you have to meet certain criteria as far as the wood or, the structural members, and then the type of drywall. But I have actually seen some products out there that in some circumstances where they removed that tin and restored it, got the separation, then reattached it. And there's certainly some aftermarket stuff now that they can put that back up into a ceiling as well. And it has no impact on the fire rating. And you actually obtain your fire rating through that measure.
Okay. If there are any more questions, please type them in at this time. Joe, do you have anything else?
I don't. I'm good.
All right.
Great. Well, I'll also leave my contact information here. Feel free to give me a call if you have any additional questions. I'll do my best. And if I can, I know in some cases I referred to our building department. I can certainly have our Jerry Warner or our Dave Eflin or Sean Hughes with our city provide some additional insight. Many of you probably already know them. Feel free to give them a call, what's being done here in the city of Delaware. But again, it all goes back to being a true partnership and working together both from a private standpoint and from a public standpoint.
All right, great. Well, Chief Donahue, I want to thank you for joining us today. And for any upcoming webinars, you can always find them on our website at heritageohio.org. And thank you everyone for coming. I hope you learned a lot. Have a good day.